I'm Josh Chaloner. I'm currently working as a IP network engineer for Shaw, which basically entails just managing all of the sort of back-end networks, upstream connectivity to the sort of wider internet, off-island connectivity, and also sort of the provisioning and management of Ethernet Connect services, IP feeds, sort of any sort of service that businesses might have direct to their offices. I sort of look after most of that.
Okay, so a lot of the work that you do then is around the commercial sector and businesses in the island rather than residential?
In terms of services that I'm sort of actively provisioning and bits and pieces, sure. I do also look after some of the other systems that sort of facilitate more residential services, back end of the broadband network, for example, and some of the sort of upstream connectivity for the mobile infrastructure, things like that. So touch a bit of all of it, really.
And in terms of then, I mean, you've mentioned there, obviously, the broadband network. We all need it, don't we? We all use it, we all need it, we all want it to work to the best of its ability.
Absolutely.
So in terms of your workload then, there's quite a lot of demand on you and your teams and the wider team at Shaw, just to make sure that everything is always working as well as it can.
There certainly is. Especially obviously at the moment with the fibre rollout that's happening by Guernsey Fibre. That's obviously generating quite a bit of work, but also really improving and sort of future-proofing the network for years to come. Obviously now we're sort of able to push out sort of gigabit or higher connectivity to residential customers, which is great. It's going to enable household streaming, kids on gaming on Xbox or whatever, no one's going to be interfering with each other anymore. Plenty to go around.
And my understanding is that the fibre network rollout is going really well and might be finished ahead of schedule. I know that's not for you to confirm, but it all seems to be going really well. And anecdotally, myself as an example, it does make a real difference when you've got fibre in your home. We've got it in the office here. We've had it in the office here for a long time now. But when you get it at home as well, you do notice, as you said, when people are doing different things in different rooms, and it all just works.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm not too involved with the actual rollout itself, but I know that it's definitely been going well. And I think there's been a sort of very big uptake from the sort of consumer space where people really want these services, which is great. And yeah, like you say, makes a massive difference. Even on, there's the very high-end speed services, the gigabits and higher, up to 2 gig now that we're offering to the premises. But even, 500 meg services make such a big difference compared to the old VDSL speeds for, like you say, multi-use. And everyone's just so connected these days, whether that's with your smartphones or laptops, gaming consoles, smart fridges, everything is connected to the internet now. So everything is just using more of that bandwidth, even just in the background when you're not realizing. And I think that causes a lot of, not issues as such, but it's maybe something that's not thought about perhaps. You might have 10, 15 IoT devices, which is just, your sort of not user devices, so fridges, freezers, washing machines, smart light bulbs, Ring doorbell systems, whatever it might be. They're all using internet bandwidth. They're all talking to something. And, these stack up and it does have an impact, but often an unseen impact or an unthought about impact, I guess. So yeah, just having that extra bandwidth there really makes a difference.
So IoT devices?
So Internet of Things, basically anything that's connected to the internet, but isn't necessarily like a user device, so like a laptop or a phone. So fridges, you can have those fridges now where they'll tell you when you run out of things, and you can have your washing machine, you can turn it on remotely, and you can set your oven to turn on so it's ready when you get home, all sorts of things like that.
Which to me just seems fantastic that now you can, as you said, you can set your washing machine and you can turn it on remotely. That's a game changer in terms of people's home lives and making their devices, a washing machine in this sense, work for them. But in terms of technology and wider changes, I mean, do you mind if I ask how long have you worked at Shaw?
Shaw on and off for about 10, 11 years.
Okay, so more than a decade then, should you say, or just over a decade. And how has technology changed in that in that kind of slice of your life then?
Oh, massively. I mean, when I first started at Shaw, I was I've worked in a couple of different roles over the years. I used to work more in the sort of IT side, sort of internal IT, looking after all of that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of services that we offer and services that customers are requesting, certainly business customers, things like that. You know, you were looking at ADSL broadband when I started, which miles ahead of the old dial-up from back when. But you know, you were still looking at up to 20 meg was sort of your limit. And you know, even back then, 20 meg seemed like quite a lot. It was, you know, it was plenty for most people. And yeah, so over the time, that's just increased and increased. And again, more, I think, just because demand has increased based on everyone just being so connected now. You know, everyone's on Facebook, YouTube, watching videos, LinkedIn, whatever it might be, but it's just all the time. You're always on, and just always connected. I think from the business space, there's been a lot of changes there as well, around, you know, your standard sort of telephony connectivity. You know, you don't have the big Mitel blocks anymore with all of your what used to be called ISDN services coming in. A lot of it's moving now to VoIP or voice over IP. Lots of things with Teams integration, SIP services, things like that. So now, you know, on Teams you can have a video call or you can phone someone's landline. You know, you can configure it to use these SIP services, and yeah, it just gets rid of a lot of sort of requirement for in-office equipment. You no longer need, you know, like these big bulky analog phone systems anymore. It just all runs in the cloud. And that's it. You know, it's a pretty simple setup process. A little bit of you know, connectivity required, but once you're done, that's it, and it's the way everything's going.
I was reading something, I probably saw it on Facebook or something, about if Marty McFly were alive today, as a real person obviously, and he went back in time, rather than going back to 1955, he'd go back to 1995, or around then. And obviously in the movies, the Back to the Future films, I'm sure you've seen them, I hope you've seen them, now I'm referencing them. Obviously the changes from the mid-80s to the mid-50s were staggering for him as a character. And if you went back to the mid-90s now, we would see some of these developments and changes that you're talking about, thinking back to when I was at school and, you know, part-time jobs and stuff, it is just staggeringly different, isn't it? Technology has advanced so quickly, definitely in the last 10, 20 years. But if you go back 3 decades, it's a different world.
Completely different, yeah. I mean, if you think even smartphones, which are very commonplace now, when 2010, really, they were sort of starting to hit the market. So just in the last 15 years, now most people wouldn't know what to do without a smartphone with them at all times. But yeah, even 10, 15 years ago, they just weren't commonplace. They weren't used. And certainly going back, to the sort of 90s, even the 80s, you know, we're looking all around sort of the birth of the internet and the sort of, global interconnection that is now, you know, commonplace, and everyone's just kind of used to it. But yeah, it was a big change. And I think, I think we've changed a lot more in the last 10, 20 years, even than the 10, 20 years before that. It's a real rapid change and rapid growth in the sort of technology space. I think I'm just quite excited to see what else is coming next, really.
I was going to say, actually, because I can see your face lights up talking about these advances and developments that we've already experienced. Do you think the rate of advance and developments will be as great in the next 10, 20 years? Or have we kind of reached a point now where a lot of it's been done, a lot of it's been achieved?
I guess it gets to the point where you think, well, where else can we go?
Yeah.
But I think with, you know, AI as it is taking off, that's going to become it's already a massive thing, but it's going to take over, for want of a better word, I guess, and it's going to be being used in everything. And I think we'd be able to utilise that, those sort of language models and various bits and pieces to assist with the development and improvement of lots of things. And I do think it will drive that change. Whether for the better or not, we'll see.
Well, this is is it, whether it is for the better or not. But actually, arguably, our lives are easier because of the technology that we've got now. Definitely working lives. I mean, the equipment that we work with, using ourselves as an example, well, it just didn't exist, as you said,
Yeah, absolutely.
10, 15 years ago. But we have these demands now. You used the word demands earlier in the interview. And we probably are, as a community, very demanding on shore, aren't we? You know, we all want instant connectivity. We all want it to work at the touch of a button, and it does. You know, but we are very demanding. If there's ever a problem, well, why is there a problem? And we will continue with those demands as any further technology advances.
Oh, absolutely.
Would you say, is it the business community driving that then? Because I was going to say a lot, but every business now does rely on technology.
I think so. Yeah, I think the connectivity really, regardless of the industry that you're in, it's so important now. Going back to the Mitel systems and the phone systems, where you'd have like an in-house sort of analog phone system, whatever it may have been. That's obviously all now moving towards this sort of SIP or voice over IP, internet-based.
So
SIP is just one of the protocols that's used for sort of voice communications.
Okay.
It's used for things like Teams Voice, things like that.
Right.
So you can, route your sort of standard, landline phone calls, your standard phone number, and then use that over a digitized service across the internet. So that's obviously a big thing now. But the same with all the other sort of services that businesses use, regardless of their industry. They're going to be using, email. They're going to be using word processing applications, whatever that may be. Historically, you may have hosted servers in your office that your IT would have looked after to facilitate that. But now a lot of it's going to the cloud. You've got the Microsoft 365 suites and things like that, where, I mean, all the cloud really is you've taken that server and someone else just looks after it. So in this case with like 365, Microsoft look after that, but you can then have your services on there, your email, Teams, whatever it may be. But it's really enabled a much easier workflow for sort of connecting people to each other. And I think that's what it's all about, really. As a networking engineer, my job is literally connecting people together or connecting devices. And that's what it's all about. And I think, especially in Guernsey, with us being sort of offshore, a lot of our, I guess our main industries over here is the finance sector. But a lot of them are in multiple jurisdictions around the world, whether they're in other off-island places. They might be in the Cayman Islands, they might be, in Jersey, in Guernsey, in London. They could be anywhere. But yeah, what the technology has enabled us to do is for them to work together as if they're sat next to each other in the same room, and that's what it's all about, really.
Absolutely. So in terms of that, and you've probably already explained this so well, but telecoms itself, how does telecoms play, or how vital a part does telecoms play in connecting that world? Because to me, as someone outside your industry, I still think of telecoms as picking up the phone to talk. But as you've been saying, it's all done through Teams now. That's telecoms. Yeah,
so telecoms has changed. We don't. There are still some of the old, analog systems, but they're sort of all being phased out. A lot of it now is, like I say, going to SIP or voice over IP from purely, telephone calls. So that's all becoming digitized now, and it's all just over the internet. But even connecting up, offices, that's all changing. Lots of them now will have all of those services will no longer be in like necessarily a local data center. Certainly some are, and depending on people's needs. But a lot of their services run in the cloud now. So it's more about getting their local offices connected up to Microsoft Azure, AWS, which is Amazon's variant, or whoever it may be, and getting that connection working and stable so that their business can succeed in what they're trying to do.
And in terms of offering the different versions, so you mentioned Microsoft and Amazon, I mean, they're global brands.
Yes.
Your customers in Guernsey can utilise those services.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, they're available to anyone with an internet connection, really.
Yeah.
So just on standard internet, you can use some of their services. What we're seeing more common now is direct connectivity into these other global companies, whether that's Microsoft, Amazon, whoever, and people have their own dedicated line straight from their offices direct into their cloud infrastructure, just to offer them more security for one. They can also, they can encrypt traffic over these links for data protection for whatever it may be. They can also, have reliable speed, guaranteed speeds a lot of the time, depending on what the services are they're going for. And it's just dedicated for them. It's not shared with anyone. So it's just, it gives you a much more reliable connection.
And so for businesses who are looking to invest in their kind of communication requirements, and as we said, there's been so many advances already made, and I mean, I'm learning so much from you today about different options that are available. So for businesses that are wanting to invest, their telecommunication needs is an area where they can really make sure they've got the very best to suit their own individual needs.
I think so, yeah. The connectivity is so important these days. And again, talking about speed increases and things like that, time matters. Time is money, as they say. And it does make a difference in certain industries. And believe me, I'm no expert on this. But for example, the stock exchanges and things like that, time matters down to the millisecond. Between when you've made one trade or another, can make a massive difference to the outcome. So yeah, that connectivity is very important, and obviously you need it to be fast, you want it to be reliable, just to remove that pressure. Once you've got that reliable connectivity in place, you don't have to worry about it. You can then focus on the other areas. You're not having to really, I think, your telecommunications sort of services in some ways should go unnoticed.
That's true.
You need that connectivity, but it should be there, it should be working exactly how you need it to, and it shouldn't be causing you any bothers. It should just be there and allow you to get on with whatever it is you need to get on with.
And you mentioned a couple of words before that stuck in my mind. So security, obviously very important, and alongside that then now is data protection, which is such an issue for everyone. Every business, every individual needs to be aware of data protection regulations, not just even in Guernsey, but in other jurisdictions that you might be communicating with for work. And telecommunication investment then by businesses can help make sure that the work that you're doing, the data that you're transferring is secure.
Absolutely. Security is a big aspect. I think it's sort of coming into the limelight a little bit more now, and people are sort of starting to recognise the need for it. I think there's always been a need for it, but certainly it's getting much more important. You hear about all of the ransomware attacks and other things that are taking businesses out. So it's very important to know where you're connected, what you're connected to, use encryption, use any available means to protect your data, to protect your systems, and that's really important. Especially from a data protection side of things, we've got GDPR come in and various other things in the last few years, which also brings up another point, which is data residency, which is where you store your data. Cool, yeah. So, lots of businesses are going to have databases that will have potentially their customer information, client information, whatever it may be. Any services that they've sold, that will be recorded somewhere. That needs to be protected, and in certain cases, that needs to be stored in a specific place, whether that's in Europe or whether that's in the UK, America, whatever, depending on who that customer is, their data needs to be in a specific place, based on the requirements and regulations set forth by the governing bodies. And that's why, I was saying about most people are shifting stuff to cloud, but people are still hosting things in local data centers. And a big part of that is that data residency. They can guarantee that their data is in Guernsey, it is not anywhere else. And they have full control of that, of where that data lives.
So whereas we've discussed the demands then, and we want quick, seamless connectivity, and so businesses and individual residents will make those investments because they want everything to work well and to just work without even thinking about it. As you said, you shouldn't need to think about it. It's just there in the background and it works. But actually there are real risks if the investment isn't made, particularly for businesses. So genuinely there is a need for investment to make sure that that security is there.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not gonna tell anyone how to do their business, but certainly I think don't sit on legacy services. See what's available. If your sure customers, speak to your account managers, see if there's anything new we can offer you, anything that will improve what you've currently got, just to make sure that you're running on the latest greatest sort of tech, I guess. Make sure that you're making use of all of the new technologies and the security that comes with those, and that'd be your best bet.